Well, the plan for today is to continue going over 5-1 quiz, this module's quiz, standard ABC. And once we're satisfied that we've got a good feel for all the kinds of questions that it's going to ask, then I'm happy to start talking about the advanced ABC stuff, which, the spoiler alert is, I have first stage allocation and second stage allocation. These two kind of simplify one or the other. These two simplifications try to simplify first stage allocation or second stage allocation. They're really just two, and all the questions tend to gravitate around those two simplifications. That's what makes it advanced ABC. All right, so let's start with some questions here. A particular type of question you've been working on the quiz that has come up, Haley? Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, that is in there. I forgot about that. So there is one. Okay, this is the one. This is the one or a version of it. There might be a couple different that have a lot of similarities, but just different numbers, for example. Okay, so this one, there are versions of this question that ask you to solve it with ABC, and versions of the questions that ask you to solve with job order. So at the bottom here, this underlined portion will vary. Some of the questions will ask you about job order, some of the questions will ask you about ABC. So I left this in here either because I forgot to take it out at one semester, or every time I try to take it out, I think to myself, no, there's an educated purpose for this, because I'm trying to contrast ABC versus more traditional job order costing. But we don't really spend a lot of time going over Chapter 4, and I even said there aren't Chapter 4 questions, and here I am putting a Chapter 4 question in. So we'll make sure we go over this question so you know exactly how to solve it if it comes up. So there's all the data. It's tons of data. Not really that much. It's very spread out. Lots of white space in the data there. Blank space there. All right. This company, Bienvenue Incorporated, has identified the following budgeted overhead cost pools and activity drivers for the next year. So the key here is to realize that this is all the overhead. If we're doing ABC, we're going to take these cost pools, the amounts of the cost pools, and divide them by the drivers to get activity rates. If we're doing job order costing, then we never split all this overhead up into these four cost pools. We just have the total amount here, which is 100 plus 200,000, 300,000, plus 60,000. So $360,000 of overhead is the total right here. And we just have that in the numerator, which is our overall overhead that we're going to be developing one firm-wide PDOH rate, predetermined overhead rate. That's what PDOH stands for. And so the question specifically says, using job order costing, what is the unit cost for job CC? Okay, so we need to figure out what the cost for job CC is, and then what the unit cost is, since there are 100 units in this job. This job is to produce 100 units of something. I don't know exactly. I don't think I said what the company is doing, what they produce, or what service they provide. But there are 100 units of it. And so we have an overall cost for job CC, and then 1/100th of that will be the unit cost for job CC. And also this is an important detail. The company budgets 4,000 direct labor hours. So we're going to use direct labor hours as the cost driver, and we're going to assume that none of the overhead costs listed are SG&A costs. So that means we can take all this $360,000 that are here in the four cost pools in that ABC table here, and just say, oh, well, that's all overhead. Job order costing will treat that all as overhead. There's no SG&A cost. And we have the big rectangle, and we have the dotted lines, and we have direct costs, overhead costs, and SG&A. And with ABC, we get rid of this dotted line, and we just have little circles with the different cost pools. That's what's in the textbook, right? And so theoretically, you could have some SG&A costs that you believe under ABC prudence that you think is correlated through an activity driver that you're using in ABC. And so it's pulling an SG&A cost that would have not even been considered a product cost under job order costing. So that last parenthetical is there to say, don't worry, that's not the case here. They're all overhead. So we can just use that 360,000. I'll start with Excel. I'm going to end Excel anyway. So let's just go into Excel here. So job order cost problem. We have total overhead. And we'll give a space. And we'll go back up just so we see what I did. 100,000 plus 40,000 plus 200,000 plus 20,000, and that should be 360,000. So I just took these because that's the total overhead for the firm. None of it's SG&A. We know that from the parenthetical. We can take that as a total overhead or budgeted overhead. And then we can take our we can get total budgeted cost driver. And I'm going to move this over here just so I don't know where how big that is. And we said that our cost driver is 4,000 direct labor hours, which means that we need to charge, looks like the numerator divided by the denominator here, we need to charge $90 per direct labor hour. This is overhead dollar per direct labor hour. That's what that's a rate for. So we're going to charge job CC based on the number of direct labor hours it consumes, $90 per hour for overhead. So job CC has certain costs that it can be traced directly to it. $375 of material, I don't know, metal or wood or machinery or whatever it is that's directly traced to it. We tracked the time of direct workers, direct labor, their time, and multiplied it by the rate that we're paying them. So $350 worth of direct labor wages belongs to job CC. And then we have 50 direct labor hours that they use. So job CC, we'll do 50. This is the consumption of the cost driver times the rate associated with the cost driver gives us allocated or assigned. There's one other A word I think as well. It's not coming to my mind right now. But a bunch of different words that mean the same thing. We're just pushing it to job CC. We're saying this is your responsibility. Absorbed is I think the other word I was thinking of. Absorbed by job CC. So that's the dollar amount that's absorbed in for overhead. Now, I bet $45 is an answer here, and you're like, we have $4,500 of overhead in job CC, 100 units. The unit cost must be $45. You missed the fact that we have some direct costs also that are traceable to job CC. So you have to include those as well. We have $375. Direct materials cost for job CC, and we have $350, which is the direct labor cost for job CC. And now the sum of these is the total cost for job CC. 100 units in job CC, meaning $52.25, the dividend of those two, is the unit cost for job CC.
So for job order costing, you would disregard the machine hours, the number of setups. You would just use that single rate with the direct cost.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you just use the one cost driver. If I don't have any questions like this, but if there were questions that said departmental rates, you would use multiple rates in terms of each department has its own rate. But the answer is yes to your question. Yes, in this the job order costing, we're just going to use a much simpler one driver, and we can ignore the setups, orders, machine hours, kilowatt hours. In fact, they're probably not tracking that even if they're using job order costing. The firm is, we wouldn't really have that information if it were just using job order costing. Yep. In fact, let's do that right now, I think. Unless somebody else has a question about what we did here. Yeah, so let's take these same numbers, but then if we were doing ABC, what would be the unit cost for job CC? And we will indeed, take into account how much consumption of each of the activity drivers is being consumed. So I'm going to set up the table now, 100,000. I'm going to copy the table over. In fact, let me see if it'll play nice. And copy over. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, so we have for each of these pools. Oh, is that what it's doing? Is it before the numbers? Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. In fact, I wonder if I can. Oh yeah, it's fancy, but you can do clean there. It gets rid of it. No, we have over here. Is there? Okay. Well, I thought it was going to play nice, but it didn't play as nice as I thought. All right. So these are our activity rates. So for setup activity has a cost pool of $100,000. It's going to be rated out to individual jobs based on the number of setups those jobs consume. We have 500 setups we're expecting. And so for each setup, we're going to charge a job $200. Order fulfillment, same idea. 400,000 divided by 3,200 gives us $12.50. 200,000 divided by 4,000 gives us $50 for maintenance. And then power, $20,000 divided by 80,000 kilowatt hours gives us 25 cents per kilowatt hour. And so now we can take job CC's driver consumption and copy it over here. So now we are going to take into account the fact that they consumed one setup, 4 orders, 20 machine hours, and 30 kilowatt hours. And since in ABC we don't even think direct labor hours is a decent enough, we don't even think it's a driver we should be using at all under ABC in this example. So we don't even need to consider, in this case, in ABC, we can ignore this one. Under job order costing, we ignored these 4. ABC, we can ignore this line right here. So we're going to end up with, let's not highlight that. One setup, just from right here. 4 orders from right below. 20 machine hours, 30 kilowatt hours. And that's going to give us, multiply these out. It's going to give us the overhead that's allocated. Same as up there, same idea. Instead of $4,500 of overhead being allocated to job CC because of a $90 PDOH rate, overhead dollars per direct labor hour and 50 direct labor hours, we're going to take these 4 rates times the consumption and end up with $1,257.50 overhead allocated to job CC. Now, why isn't that working? Okay. No, I don't want that. I want this. Okay, so I'm just copying over the same stuff as is up here in the job order costing portion of the problem. Same procedure. Once we have the overhead that's allocated to job CC, we then make sure we add in the direct costs. So now we have total cost of job CC, and we have the units, so we can get the unit cost. The same thing down here. We have a different allocation overhead, but the same direct labor and direct materials being added in. So we have total cost of now $1,982.50, $1,982.50, that is. And you divide that by the 100 units in job CC, and you end up with $19.83 as the unit cost for job CC. So yeah, does that work? Okay. All right, questions on there? This spreadsheet? Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
Did the problem tell us that labor hours was going to be our cost driver?
Yes, at the very bottom here, it wants you to use direct labor hours as the cost driver.
And would you say the ABC method is more accurate?
Yes. Yes. I know. So yes, I want to say almost always. That's I'll put the almost in there, but it's hard to think of a reason why it wouldn't be as accurate.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got a lot of overhead costs that we're incurring, that we are pushing onto job CC, that's going to make it look very unprofitable now with job order costing. And with ABC, we're realizing, it's not consuming nearly as much overhead, and so we might accept the job instead of reject the job. For example, a very profitable job under this. Yeah, it's a big difference. Yeah, exactly. So I hesitated to answer your question of whether it's more accurate, not because I'm not sure if it's more accurate, but I wanted to use a statistical truism, which is that if you add a predictor to a regression, it always is at least by some infinitesimal amount more predictive. It gains explanatory power, even if that predictor is very, very loosely associated with the dependent variables. And so ABC here is operating the same way. You add more possible predictors of your overhead cost. It's going to, assuming it's done properly, the percentage weight table there is doing a lot of the work. But assuming that that's accurate, then it's bound to be more effective. You've added more potential nodes in the network to determine the amount that it's responsible for, determine what kind of job this is effectively what we're doing. Is this a high overhead job? Is it a low overhead job? In fact, you could contrast this a little bit. So job DD here ends up with $1,000 more or so of overhead, largely because it's consuming a lot of setups. Job DD, for some reason, I just copied this over from here. These 4, 5, 25, 50 for job DD here, and it's the lot of this difference is coming from the fact that it's consuming 4 setups. So we decided there's an activity we do. This what is it called? Setup activity. It's a good name for it. This setup activity that we do that consumes a lot of time and work. And once we take that into account, we can now say, oh, there's this big differential between a job that uses 1 setup versus a job that uses 4. And if we were doing activity-based management, then we would say, hey, is there some way we could change our process to reduce the number of setups? Because there's a lot of overhead costs that's related to that. And we could accept jobs that use fewer setups. We could change our process and train our workers such that they do fewer setups, change the workflow somehow. That would be a way that we could move forward using activity-based costing information. Okay. All right, so that's the right answer here. Way back up before I went off on my tangent. Okay, here's a very similar question. So we're going to kind of skip over a little bit. I will note the question stem. Be very careful about what it's asking. This is asking for total overhead allocated to one of the jobs. And so in that case, we would stop effectively right here, or it's using ABC. So we would stop right here, just total overhead allocated to the job. We don't need to figure out what the total cost of the job is. We don't need to then figure out a unit cost for the job. It's just asking for total overhead allocated. Different styles of asking the question. All right, very, very simple question here. It's asking for an activity rate. In fact, let's pause for a minute. See if you can do that problem. Just as a check here. This problem right here. Let's wait 30 seconds, minute here. Okay, any answers? Anybody get an answer on that one? That's what I got too. Anybody get a question on that one? Have some place you didn't? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, good. Well, that's good. Good question. Yeah. Okay, so the one leap, and I hope I didn't destroy anyone's confidence saying, oh, I think I said something like it's a simple question. I responded to the question stem, meaning saying it's a simple question, because I know, it's asking for an activity rate. So activity rate is going to be activity cost pool divided by cost driver of that activity cost pool, activity driver that is. Okay, so that sounds really simple, one division problem. You have to make an assumption here, or rather, there's an assumption that it is implied anyway. This company only produces 2 products. And so this 10 plus this 10 setups means that they're only expecting 20 setups overall, period. That's all they do, just these 2 products, D and F. And so in packing order, it's asking about the activity rate for packing orders. We have the 75 and this 175, meaning that's 250 packing orders we're expecting. That's the universe of packing orders we are expecting. That's the denominator. And you take that and put in the denominator underneath 18,750, and you get the $75. Okay, so the math part of it is simple. I think we would agree with that. The translating the words into the math, which is often the case, is where some of the hiccups might happen. That's what I think tends to be the case. All right, should we try one of these problems? One of these first stage allocation problems? See some nods. See some people saying, yeah, I guess it's your show. I don't know. I'm not sure I got that much communication from what your facial expressions look like, but maybe that's what you were thinking. All right, so this is a first stage allocation problem. It's asking which of the following is true. So one of these is going to be true, 3 of them are going to be false. And they're all related to some activity cost pool amount, it looks like. So this one says dignitary services, one of our activities. The activity cost pool is $667,500. All right, and this one says the budgeted overhead cost that would generally be allocated to services is $2,925,000. What overhead costs are allocated to services under ABC? Or rather, what doesn't get allocated to services or jobs or products under ABC? Is there a category that doesn't get allocated? Is there a category without a driver? We've got 4 activities here. Any of them that would not get allocated to products or services? The other category. That's right. So there's no driver for other. Right up here, other category, and there's no driver. It's just going to be considered a period cost, like an operating cost, and it's not going to be allocated to any service. They do services, so not allocated to any services. If it were they manufacture product, not allocated to any product. So this one's saying the sum of these three activities, which are the costs that do get allocated to services, is 2925000. Okay, so might be true, might not be. And then we have the other two activity cost pools and their amounts. Okay, so let's figure out what these amounts are. Let's see if tables will play nice with us again. Or nice enough anyway. This is limousine. Limousine, I think. Yeah. Okay, let's see if hopefully there aren't any leading spaces there. And we also have, I'll copy it over. I want to do this the same way or similar to how we've set it up in the past. So I'm going to build this down here. Make this a little simpler to see. Nope, I didn't quite catch it. Okay, and get rid of what's in here. And add in, so it says here the drivers and security guard salaries are $1 million. So this general ledger account right here, 1 million, right there. 250,000 is our cost for permitting fees and background checks. 1.5 million is vehicle costs, and then 175,000 of administrative costs. All right. So we're going to take that and we're going to make absolute the column. So that $1 million, 10% of it needs to go in the planning activity. And it's not. It's $1. It's dollars. Carry that over. Expand it as needed. Okay, and we have all $1 million between the four, I should say. There's none in here just because it's a 0%. Between the four, we've accounted for all $1 million of driver and security guard salaries. Okay, we'll do the same thing. Copy that table down to the other four rows. Make sure it worked. Yeah, looks like it's feeding appropriately. And we can do a little check figure right there. That should be 0 on each row. The sum of all the stuff we divvied out minus what we started with should be 0. And it is. All right, so now we need to sum these columns and see what's true and what's not. So, dignitary services, activity cost pool. Is that 667,500? No. So that one's false, right? First one, A, whatever, is false. Budgeted overhead costs that would generally be allocated to services, which means these three right here. Looks like the sum of those down here at the bottom of it in Excel is 2,805,000. Is that equal to this answer choice, which says 2.925? And equal. So that's a false statement as well. Traveling and security, right here, also not equal to the one it says, right here. That says it's 2.5 million. That's false because it's 1.4925 million. The last one is the true answer. The planning activity has an activity cost pool of $445,000. So almost in a, if you like laws of physics, almost in a conservation of overhead cost, all the overhead costs we started with in general ledger categories have been maintained overall. They've just been sliced up differently into the different activities based on activity drivers. Okay, questions on that? Or similar questions that you have questions about? Does that sound confusing? Similar problems like this one you were going to go through the quiz, and you're like, actually, I have a question about that. I like it when you say you don't have questions about it. I think if that is a signal of you getting it really well, if it's a signal of me being too intimidating, don't laugh, then that's not good. Or a signal that you haven't started the quiz yet, also not a good thing. Simply, time is the ultimate constraint. Microsoft and the mom and pop shop down the street, they all only have 24 hours in the day. So the time between the time you can put in or how much you put in is going to be let me say it this way. Getting started early is a big indicator of success on these quizzes that I've seen over the years. All right. We have one of the few conceptual questions. They're sprinkled in here and there, like definitional or conceptual questions. And I try to get as much bang for the buck as I can. This one is asking you what kind of firm is likely to want to use activity-based costing. Or let's see what. No. Excuse me. It's asking you whether there's likely to be a difference between job order costing and activity-based costing. So it really hinges on this illustration right here. Versus the job order costing version of it, which doesn't have these Swiss cheese circles. It has a dotted line right here and has SG&A costs over here. This question hinges on your ability to interpret and infer what that means. So a firm produces several product lines through semi-customized orders. Okay, well, that's good because we'll talk about process costing in a couple weeks, and those quizzes are coming along. So I know many of you are dying to start those quizzes. I know. I get the emails. But they'll be available when very soon. And semi-customized means it would not be good to do process costing. You're going to want to incorporate the fact that individual orders are customized, and therefore job order costing would be a good fit. The orders are semi-customized, which means they likely differentially are responsible for overhead costs based on those custom variations in different orders. And so it's going to be a good fit. We'll contrast that to process costing in a minute. And ABC, as I presented anyway, is an outgrowth of job order costing, a refinement of it. I think that's the best way to at least get an intro into ABC or a refresher in this case for me. Okay, so anyway, semi-customized orders, the firm incurs significant SG&A costs. All right, I want the alarm bells to go off in your head. At least this might be important. Because if it incurs significant SG&A costs, and under job order costing, there's a big dotted line right there where the mouse is, and everything to the right of the line is SG&A costs, it means there's a lot here. That's what the question is saying. So the dotted line might not be over here. It might be way over here. A lot of SG&A costs, not as much overhead. But the point is that they exist. There are SG&A costs in this firm, and quite a bit. And so which of the following is true about the firm given only the above information? So the difference between ABC and job order costing in this case is ABC is willing to take SG&A costs that would normally be considered period costs. That gap requires you to consider period costs and is willing to assign them responsibility if they are indeed correlated through an activity driver. So it rips out that dotted line, which is one of the reasons why ABC is not gap compliant. It's a decision system that companies have to be big enough to say, we're going to run I don't want to say two sets of books, that's bad, two decision systems overlaid on top of each other, one that's gap compliant for our financial reporting, and another one, ABC, which will give us more accurate information for decision making. Because you can't report based on ABC in your financial statements. It's not gap compliant. All right, so this firm will be more profitable if it uses ABC. Maybe. I want to put a pin in that. I think there might be better answers here. This firm is likely to get different product costing numbers, using activity-based costing compared to job order costing. I think there's a good likelihood that that's going to be the answer, because it's likely, given significant SG&A costs, that some of those costs are getting pulled in through ABC, and that alone is going to give it some different numbers. And then there's the fact that ABC uses multiple activity drivers, and that also is going to be important. All right, this firm will not be more profitable if it uses activity-based costing. All right, let's put that kind of in the same category as this. It's clearly the contrast to this first one. Let's come back to that in a second. This firm is likely to get the same product cost numbers using activity-based costing or job order costing. And I don't think that's true. I think because ABC uses multiple cost drivers, so it'll be more refined, most likely, and because we have significant SG&A costs and some of those might get pulled in to be product costs, that last one is not true. So I want to answer this one, and I'll tell you why I'm throwing these two out. Because we don't know enough to know if it's going to be profitable to incorporate ABC. The sales pitch of ABC is more accurate. But it costs a lot to implement. A lot being relative, of course. But it costs a certain amount to implement. It's not free. It's not free to have the experts fly out and do the cost study, interview all the people, survey the people to figure out what kind of activities you do, and then to trace all those activity drivers to the products and have a reporting system and a subscription, a software as a service you're subscribed to that will help you crunch those numbers, have somebody who's going to crunch the numbers and deliver that kind of information to the decision maker. There are lots of costs associated with that. And then there's that information has an expiration date. It gets old over time. You have to bring people back out to do a refresher cost study or look back at your numbers. Do we have the right cost drivers still? Do we have the right activity cost pools? Is the percentage weight table still up to date? So on and so forth. And so there are costs associated with ABC, and we don't have enough info to know if those costs outweigh the extra profits from making more profitable decisions for this firm. We just don't know. So we can't answer A or C. We just don't know enough, which is why I have this comma given only the above information. We do know it's very likely they're going to get different numbers between ABC and job order costing, especially with the SG&A piece, in addition to the fact that ABC with multiple cost drivers just generally gives you different numbers. All right, so that question, based on those couple of nuggets of information, the SG&A piece, selling general administrative costs, that is included in overhead in ABC, and look, it's not always the answer. I teach on occasion a case called Dream Chocolate. This is where I make you jealous and mad at me. Sorry. This is a local firm, Dream Chocolate. Anybody heard of Dream Chocolate before? Okay, it's just down Cole Road. I don't know. It doesn't really matter where it is because it's not like a retail state. You don't go in there and buy things. I do because I'm special, but it's not really for the general public. But anyway, Dream Chocolate, local firm. They did a case on it because there was Kip Crumweedy, I believe is his name, who was with the Institute of Management Accountants now, so some bigwig out there. But he used to have effectively this job, teach cost accounting here at Boise State. I wanted to do a case, took some students out there, did a case for Dream Chocolate. All right, Dream Chocolate's not a large firm. They are not a giant firm. They just have that one location as far as I can tell. So how much? And so anyway, the case involves what kind of costing system should they use? Should they use job order costing system? Should they use process costing? Should they use activity-based costing? Should they use some sort of hybrid between the two or the three? Anyway, when we use the case, and we teach it in class, that's the objective. And inevitably, I come away with some students, even if I preface the way I have right now, some students are saying, of course they use ABC. They should obviously use ABC. I'm not so sure. Will they get more accurate information? Well, based on the numbers in the case, spoiler alert, you do get more accurate information based on with ABC numbers in the case. But it would cost something to implement. I don't know if it's justified for that size of firm. Oh, the part that I make you mad is that when I teach that case in a given semester, I try to go there and bring in some chocolates, and so it's like nice chocolate too. I didn't realize the difference. I'm an uncultured swine here, and I was like, Hershey's, yeah, that's good chocolate. And then people are like, no, it's mostly wax. It's terrible. Get some real chocolate, and they do like German, European style real chocolate. So if you want some real chocolate, see if you can order some from them or find where they are in a retail market around here. I think they do have some places where they're available by retail. Anyway, random tangent over. Here's another first stage. And okay, ABM, activity-based management. So this is a good question. So this firm uses activity-based costing and has the following activity rates. We have, look, I've already got first stage allocation done. I'm giving you the rates even. $100 per machine hour, $500 per batch start, and $5 per order. All right, and we have two several products. Well, that's a typo. Let me make a note here. I will fix that. Two several products. It's not good English there. Okay, two products. Oh, sorry, it has several products, including the following two. Okay, I think I know how I changed this question over time and failed to fix the sentence all the way. It has several products, including the following two. Product one, $100,000 revenue, $50,000 direct costs, and then the consumption of product one in terms of the three cost drivers we have up above: machine hours, batch starts, and orders. At product two, same information: total revenue and the direct costs, like direct materials and direct labor, and then the three activity drivers that we're tracking with in this firm, with this firm's ABC. Okay, which of the following process improvements is the most profitable? All right, so we have four different things we could do. We could invest some money into improving our process, and given our ABC info, we have a clearer picture of how profitable our products are and will be if we make different process improvements. And so activity-based management is when we say, how can we manage the future of our firm better using this ABC information, and do something just like this. This is patterned after very similar questions in activity-based management sections of textbooks tonight. I wanted to hit on just the same points that they did, and this is what I came up with. Okay, so we have four different ones, and what we're going to do is I'm going to build in Excel here the model of the firm. So here we have, what is this? Just a firm. All right, this is a ABM problem, activity-based management, ABM. And we have P1, I'll move it over here, P2, total column, product one, $100,000 in revenue, product two, $95,000, product one, $50,000 in direct costs, product two, $40,000 in direct costs, and then their consumption, 250 machine hours, 40 machine hours, 25 batch starts for product, 25 batch starts for product one, 16 batch starts for product two, 500 orders for product one, 400 orders for product two. Okay, we'll label all those: rev, direct costs, machine hours, batch starts, orders. Okay, I care about those two, I guess. Sure, really need the total column there. In fact, I'm not going to get the total column in here. Forget you. Okay, now we have our rates, and I'm just going to copy them over to both 500 and 5. So this is our MH rate, our activity rate associated with machine hours. This is our batch start rate, the rate associated with batch starts, and this is our order rate. So let me distinguish these with some formatting here. These are all dollar amounts, and these are consumption of drivers, so they don't get a dollar sign. And we're going to multiply those consumption of drivers by the respective rates. I don't have to make anything absolute here because of the way I set it up. So now we have MH costs associated with machine hours. This is the amount of overhead allocated to product one and product two based on their consumption of machine hours. Batch costs and order costs. I hope I'm summarizing this in a way that makes sense. It runs parallel to exactly what we've done in the past. Maybe I'm using slightly different words, but the ideas are the same. So in total, this is our overhead. This is the overhead allocated to product one. These three rates are our overhead rates. These three rates, and based on the consumption, that means this amount of overhead. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sum their direct costs and their overhead. So that's total costs. And now we have profit of each product, which is the revenue minus the total costs. Let me double check real quick. Oh. 250, 2500, 100. Yeah, I think I got everything copied over, right? Anybody see a problem with my copying over? All right, so overall, at least as far as these two products are concerned, we earn $51,000 in profit. In fact, what I think I will do is when I edit it, I will say the firm has two products. So this is the overall firm profit. I want you thinking, well, if we make this process improvement, it'll affect product 3 or product 4 that's out there. All right, just focus. Assume this is all we do. We earn $51,000 in profit. This is the status quo. Now, let's see what happens if we reduce the machine hour activity cost rate by 25%. Okay, let's go in here. Machine hour rate. Oh, here it is right here. Okay, so we want it to be 75% of what it is, which means reduce it by 25%. I'm going to do something fancy here. I'm going to paste special and multiply. So I'm going to multiply these two by the 75% there, right there. I know. I could have been less fancy and just put 75. But I like to feel special, so I paste special sometimes. All right, so what that has done is has increased our profits by $7,250. So far, that's pretty good, right? Oh, change this. This is MA rate decrease 25%. MH rate. That's A. If I apply that, okay? Look good? All right, let's try the next one. What's the next scenario? This is P1 direct costs decrease 12.5%. Okay. So 0.875, let's go ahead and paste special for fun. Let's just multiply the two. Okay, so instead of being 50,000, it's 87.5% of 50,000, which ends up being $43,750. If I could read numbers, that's what I would say. And profits went up even more, looks like, than before. Oh, nope. I made a mistake. It went up even more because I didn't copy from the status quo. I need to copy from the status quo each time. So no, profits did not go up anymore. Got to revert that to $100 per machine hour, not 75. We didn't make that first. We're making only the second one. All right. So yeah, looks like so far number 1 is still the winner. Answer choice A is still most profitable. All right. Let's keep going. Let's copy from the status quo this time. Make our improvements. And this one is P2 orders decrease 50%. Well, that's a big number. Maybe that's going to be really good. So they consume 400. They consume 400, and I'll just be normal and say 50% of that's 200. Oh, that's a big number, but that 50% decrease is only decreasing us by $5 per order. So it only went up from 51,000 up here to 52,000. That's not a very good improvement, right? That wasn't meant to be a test. That's obvious, right? Okay, last scenario to run here. This is the P1, P2 batch starts decrease 25%. Okay? So decreasing this by 25% puts us at 375. Here. I think it'll be more believable if I do it this way instead of doing it in my head. Okay, so if we reduce it by 25%, then yes? Ah, thank you. Yes. Okay. Reduce batch starts by 25%. Okay, there we go. Thanks. All right, so we're going to have 18.75 batch starts for product 1 somehow, and 12 batch starts for product 2. And what does that do? It gives us 56,125, which is a good improvement, but it is not as good as B or A. So A was the best improvement we could have in terms of profit. This information comes to us only because we have figured out the mechanics of our costs, our overhead costs. We have a precise enough picture that activity-based costing allows us to make these kinds of improvements, figure out which one's most profitable. And so if all these cost us, say, $2,500 to make this improvement, it would cost $2,500 to make any of these improvements. The biggest bang for our buck for that $2,500 is to reduce the machine hour activity rate by 25%. All right, so yeah, there are some activity-based management questions like that. Let's see if we got the questions right. I don't recall how many we answered. Got that one right, good. We got that one right, good, we answered that one. This one got it right. This one got that one right. Didn't answer that one. Got that one right, good. Got them right. I am going to... No, that's fine. All right. Any other Chapter 5 questions you really want to look at? Yeah.
The Boise Baker one.
Boise Baker. Is that muffins and cheesecakes? Yeah. Okay. Let's look at that one. We had that one on an earlier one as well, I think. Okay. And it looks really ugly until you space it way, way out and get rid of... No. Yeah. Get rid of the sidebar here. And then Boise Baker. Oh, suddenly it makes sense. All right, so let's read it real quick, and then we'll shrink it and copy it over to Excel and answer it. All right, so Boise Baker sells muffins and cheesecakes. Ivan Tweetcake, the firm's new accountant, wants to use an activity-based costing system to take into consideration the cost of the delivery person, which is usually considered an SG&A cost and not included in cost of goods sold. So it's not considered a product cost usually. We're going to pull that. We're going to do an ABC-like maneuver at least, or use ABC to pull in an SG&A cost because we think we can trace it to individual product units or to product lines in this case. He calculates the activity rate for deliveries is $20 per delivery hour. All right, so there's going to be a little bit of a time play here potentially because we have hours here and minutes here. We do need to keep that in mind. All right, so each of these two, muffins gives us $52,000 in revenue and $26,000 of normal costs. But we also have this SG&A cost that would be much lower down on the income statement. So if we were doing a P&L of just our muffins, we'd have our revenue minus our cost of goods sold, giving us gross profit, and we'd have some operating expenses of some kind to give us our net profit in a very summarized, or simplified fashion. And we're saying, hey, you know what? Delivery costs so far have been considered an operating expense for us, but we want to trace it, and we think we can use that to allocate that into a product cost effectively. Whether we represent it on the income statement like that literally, we're going to use it as if it's a product cost, just like the cost of goods sold stuff. So really, it might be simpler of a question than we think. There are a couple tripping points of, I use cost of goods sold, I use SG&A, can I think through what that means? Or the teacher's using that, can I think through what that means? And secondly, can I ration time appropriately? So let's copy this over, see if it'll copy over in a pretty way over to Excel. Whoa, that got real shrunk. No, it did not copy over well at all. All right. Nope, 53. And I got rid of the information. All right, 46,000, 21,000, 1275. All right, I think I've copied everything over. Minutes of delivery time, COGS, revenue, 5326, 1500, 4621, 1275. Yeah. All right. And then we also have a $20 from the questions dim, or question paragraph above. So get rid of this too. Wow, that is strange formatting. All right, $20 per hour is our delivery activity rate. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to say just already we can figure out the gross profit of each of these products, or whatever you want to call it. We can just call this profit. It's all we're worried about right now. We're going to add to that. Right now, the question answers. We can get some key here. We're looking at a comparison between the two. And right now, this is actually true, I think. Muffins are $2,000 more profitable than cheesecake without incorporating any of the delivery costs. It's $2,000 more profitable. That's not going to stay the same. That's not going to be true for too long. So let's convert this into hours and that into hours. So 1,500 delivery minutes for muffins and 1,275 delivery minutes for cheesecakes gives us respectively 25 hours of delivery for muffins and 21.25 hours of delivery for cheesecake. So let's multiply that by our rate. So there's an additional cost for each of these. And it looks like muffins are $1,925 more profitable now than cheesecake. So the profitability picture looks a little different by $75, not intensely, crazily different, but enough to get the answer right, or not. Is that okay? Kind of a different way of looking at it, a little weird. So going back to the question of the profitability of implementing ABC, given this information and the size of the firm, my gut reaction would be, no, this is not the firm that would need to be using ABC. It's probably getting just fine enough information using very traditional accounting for its information. If they scaled up and became like the Muffin Man, then yeah, we're talking about millions of dollars and not $75 difference in accuracy. You know, before we said muffins were $2,000 more profitable than cheesecake. Now we say, we realize they're not quite that much. They're only $1,925 more profitable than cheesecake. If that were now hundreds of thousands of dollars because we have a huge business, then that might be enough to justify implementing ABC, at least on some level. Okay. What else? Other chapter 5? Yeah. I can put them side by side too if you want. Yep.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay, I'm not getting any more requests for Chapter 5 here. It's due on Friday. So what I'd like to do is start talking about next week's material so that it increases the likelihood we can get to problems on Tuesday. And then we have those reps before you get started on it, working for till next Friday's deadline. Okay? All right, so basically advanced ABC questions start down here, 5.5 in the textbook. Simplifying ABC. So again, ABC can be costly to implement, at least relatively speaking, compared to other costing systems you could have for product costing. So you can simplify it in a couple different ways. So the first one is the TDABC, time-driven activity-based costing. From the same people who brought you the thrilling ABC, they innovated to TDABC. This is Bob Kaplan from Harvard and David Norton, I think also from Harvard. I think David Norton was on this. I don't know. At least Bob Kaplan was involved in this. Both ABC and time-driven activity-based costing. All right, so if you want, you can just learn the 3 points, the 3 steps. Hopefully, I can explain with enough clarity how this still maps onto what we're doing with activity-based costing. And if I had to just in one sentence say how this simplifies or differs from ABC, traditional ABC, what we're doing is we're taking all of our activity rates and metering them to a constrained expert's time. So this is especially useful in healthcare settings, in professional settings like engineering, or in what are some other examples? One, two that come to mind usually. Someplace where there is a guru who knows, and his or her time is the constraint on how much work can be done in the firm. So, or in the department, or wherever we're at. So somehow we have somebody's time. There we go. Doctor hours, nurse hours, engineer hours, whatever it is. And that's going to determine how much we can do. And so we're going to want our cost to line up with our cost per expert time. And so what we'll do is we'll just take our overhead costs, our total overhead costs, and divide them by the expert time to get this thing called the capacity cost rate. So the capacity of the expert's time, of the constrained time. I mean, you can do it with a machine as well. We have some important critical machinery that is necessary, and that's the constraint, and so we're going to meter everything off that machinery. You could do that as well. But the point is, it's called time-driven activity-based costing because the first step is to take all overhead costs, meaning everything we don't trace directly to products or cost objects, and divide it by the expert or other constrained time. The practical capacity is measured in time. So how many doctor hours, nurse hours, engineer hours, machine hours, I guess, if we're using some sort of expert machine, is available during a given period of time. And then instead of figuring out some percentage weight table to get activity rates eventually, we're going to just say, well, how much does each department or process, how much of the expert time is consumed by each activity. So let's say we have, 3 activities. Instead of saying, well, it's going to consume 10% of this GL category and 20% of this other GL category, like we do in the percentage weight table traditionally, we just need one number. We just need to say, well, of the constrained amount of time or whatever, this activity consumes this much. And we're going to charge it based on the capacity cost rate. We're going to charge the activity, and that's going to fill up the activity's activity rate. So calculate activity rates by multiplying capacity cost rate by the department or process time per activity. All right, so let's go to the example real quick, in case my verbalization of this isn't as clear. So the example here is that we just got one department, and we have 3 sources of overhead. Shop supplies, maintenance, miscellaneous administrative. These same numbers as before in section 5.3. part for laziness. I don't want to develop a new example, and partly because I think the continuity is useful to contrast. All right, so we're going to assume the department, given reasonable assumptions about time off, breaks, and downtime. That's what practical capacity means as a term. We have a certain number of mechanic hours per period, 2,000 mechanic hours. I don't know if that's a month. We have multiple mechanics, and in a month they do 2,000 hours. If it's a year, we just one mechanic, 2,000 hours. But the point is, we have some constraint, and that is the critical service that is value providing the mechanic. And mechanic or mechanics has 2,000 hours, so we're going to take all of our overhead, those 50,000, 120,000, and 85,000, and divide it by the constraint, 2,000. And that gives us a capacity cost rate, overhead per capacity of constrained resource. $127.50. That's our CCR, our capacity cost rate. Now, let's say we're just going to work on those two activities that matter. The other activity, we're going to ignore it for this example. That's what I say in that paragraph. So we do our analysis. Instead of going and interviewing, the experts don't go and interview and say, well, how much time do you spend on this activity? How much time do you spend on that activity? And do the normal cost study under ABC. They do a different cost study, and they say, okay, well, for each machine hour we produce, we consume 1.25 of the constrained mechanic hours. And each batch start consumes 0.75 mechanic hours. And if each mechanic hour is rated at costing us $127.50 of overhead cost, then we can just take the number of mechanic hours that each activity consumes, in this case, an activity related to machine hours, an activity related to batch starts, and multiply that 127.5 times 1.25 and 0.75 respectively. That's what I do right here. So now we have overhead cost per machine hour by taking the CCR multiplied by the number that I give you. But I phrase it that way because that's how the problem's going to be. I'm going to give you this number. Don't worry. You don't have to go out. The questions are going to say, pause your quiz, go out and ask this company how many things that I have to give this information. There's no way I can make you calculate that information. So I've got to give you this and this. So the problems end up being not that hard if you can parse what's going on. So I multiply 1.25 mechanic hours consumed per machine hour times the overhead cost per mechanic hour. I get 159.38. That's our activity rate associated with machine hour. So instead of doing a percentage weight table and then figuring out activity cost pool and then dividing that by the activity driver we're expecting, we funneled everything through, metered it, I think is the word I used, on the constrained time that we're dealing with, hence time driven. Same thing here. 0.75 hours of constrained time times $127.50 of constrained time means that each batch start is $95.63 of overhead cost. That's our rate per batch start. And then everything else is the same. Now we have activity rates, and we would do the second stage application the same way as traditional ABC. So TM or TDABC is going to simplify that whole percentage weight business and target it at the value driver of the firm. This is specifically for firms that have that one value driver, and that really is what's bringing value to the firm. The talent on a show or whatever. That's what you would call it, person. And we're going to base our overhead cost based on the talent's time and how much is consumed with each activity. All right, I want to stop there because I don't think I can start approximated activity-based costing and give it any sort of good representation to you in 2 minutes. So, Chapter 5 standard ABC is due on Friday, it's the end of the day tomorrow. My usual disclaimer, I will try my best to respond to emails if you send them between now and then. I know you're on a deadline. I really haven't gotten that many this semester. That's, I think, a good sign. Or you're sending it to the wrong person. Remember, I'm not bknox or Brian Knox at u.Boise State. I'm just Boise State. bknox at boisestate.edu. So send it to me and I'll answer your question.